first step is to put together the background photo, or in other words, create the expansion, which in this case consists of about 11 pictures in one. I used to stitch my expansions together manually by aligning the layers and using the clone tool to blend them all together, but now I'm using the photo merge tool on Photoshop to do that work for me, which is so much easier and faster. Just go to File, Automate, Photo Merge, and this feature will put together your expansion for you incredibly well. The most important things you want to keep in mind when creating a composite is to match up the tones of all your layers. I took the background photo after the sun had set, so the lighting was really flat, which will be easy to match up with the self-portrait, which was taken in front of a window. I just erased my head from my body because I want to manipulate the dress selection without affecting my face. Right now I'm using the skew tool to elongate the dress to give me a taller appearance, since being short sometimes can be a problem in pictures. And then I'm going to edit, transform, and I'm going to choose the warp tool. And you see with the warp tool you get a box with a bunch of little points on it, and I'm just gonna pull those points and I'm just gonna manipulate the dress and make it longer and just kind of give it more flow. Then I'm just going to copy and paste a selection of my head, and I'm just going to paste that onto my body, which I know is looking pretty silly at the moment, but you kind of get used to it when you do this kind of compositing work all the time. Using the exact same composite techniques I just used on the dress and head, I'm going to copy and paste many more selections of the flying dress and flying hair details, and also the detail of the flying pages onto the main image. And then I'm going to create a new background layer, and I'm just going to use the burn tool at different exposures and different sizes and different levels of hardness to create the shadow underneath my dress. I'm also going to create a shadow underneath the book pages so it looks a little bit more natural. Now I'm going to use the lasso selection tool to create a selection and draw a circle around the areas of the picture that I want to brighten up, and I'm just going to use a curve layer and just brighten up that area. And you can just kind of watch along as I play around with the curve lines. Feel free to take a screenshot of my curve adjustments, my curve combinations, and I'm just clicking that layer on and off, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see that layer on and off, that curve layer, the difference of the lightness. Now I'm going to use the lasso selection tool again and do kind of the opposite of what I just did and create a vignette. So instead of brightening up the middle area of the picture, I'm going to darken all the outer four corner areas of the picture, which is going to create a contrast with the curve light, the lightness we just created. I'm also going to reduce the contrast and highlights of the image a little bit by pulling the very right side of the curve layer down. And usually when I'm done with making a few curve layer adjustments, then I'll go to levels, and I'll just make a few adjustments on levels. So I just brought up my levels tool. You can see on Photoshop, here's my levels feature, and I'm just going to play around with the settings a little bit. You can watch along as I do that. I'm not darkening the image, but I'm kind of bringing the highlights down a little bit so that the background isn't so bright. And I'm going to take that level adjustment we just created and I'm going to duplicate it 3 or 4 times because I really like the softness and the reduced highlight effect that the level adjustment had. So you can kind of just watch along as I'm duplicating the layers, and then I'm going to merge. I'm going to select all the layers, merge them together, and you can see that's the difference of before and after. If you've seen my other tutorials, you will know that I'm constantly clicking my layers on and off just to make sure I'm happy with the way that they look, and if there are any spots I need to correct or any areas of the layer I need to erase away at. And now this is pretty much my favorite part of my editing process, is going to my selective color adjustment layers, and I'm on my white layer, and I'm just kind of altering the cyans, magentas, and yellows a little bit. I just added a lot more yellows and cyans to the white colors. Now I just added less cyan to the red colors just to saturate the reds, and I'm adding more yellow to the yellow colors, more cyan to the yellow colors just to give a more painterly feel and get rid of a lot of that red and magenta that naturally pops up in those blue skies. Besides adjusting the selective white color, my two other favorite colors to play around with are the cyans and the blues. I just started a new thing where I add a lot more yellow to the cyan and blue colors to reduce the blueness of the overall image and just give a more yellow painterly feel to the picture. Now I'm adjusting the black selective color, and I just added a little bit more cyan, a little bit more magenta it looks like, and now I'm working with the yellows and the blacks, and they're usually just slight adjustments on when I work with the blacks and the neutral selective colors. I'm usually just increasing or decreasing the colors by like just 2 or 3, so not very much. And I really liked how the selective colors look, so I just duplicated the layers, merged them together, created a layer mask, and I'm now erasing away at my skin so my skin doesn't appear as red as my dress or the sky. I also just added a gradient to make the rocks slightly more purple and added a few more selective color layers where I reduced the redness of the blue and cyan colors. Now I'm bringing in some textures. I always make the textures black and white, and for this texture I changed the screen mode to soft light. So now I'm just going to take that texture layer and just darken it a little bit so that the texture shows up even more. And now this is a new thing I'm starting to do where I adjust the RGB colors of the texture. So you can see I'm on the red layer right now of this texture that I'm using, and I just reduced the redness and of the overall picture, and I just gave a little bit more red highlights to the picture as well. Now I'm just adjusting the green layer and also the blue layer of the RGB curve layer of this texture that I'm using, making it a little bit more yellowish looking, a little bit more painterly like, and I'm just clicking the layer on and off the texture so you can see what it looks like before and after. And I don't like that blackness at the bottom, so I'm just going to take the texture and make it bigger and stretch it out so that vignette of the texture didn't appear at the bottom. And I like the texture so much that I duplicated it again, so I have more texture, and I flipped it horizontally. And now I'm just going to merge the layers together, and I'm going to erase away, create a layer mask first, and then erase away at my hair so that my hair doesn't appear as red because I made the texture have a lot more red highlights. So I'm just removing that from the hair, and now I just downloaded a texture that I get from a Flickr account, which I'll have in the description below, and I'm just editing the texture a little bit because this is a great texture, but I don't like some of the lines of the texture, so I'm just editing that a little bit, and I'm making the texture black and white by using the hue saturation tool, and I'm changing the blending mode to screen mode, which is different than the first texture I use on soft light mode. And I'm just going to darken that texture so that the dots and the lines of the texture show up a lot more. And I'm just editing now the RGB channels of the texture, and I'm going to duplicate the texture like I did with the first texture, and I'm just going to keep duplicating it. Now I have all the layers merged together. I'm clicking the layer on and off of the texture. You can see I made the texture a little bit less red, a little bit more, have more green highlights. Now I'm using the lasso selection tool to create a selection on the picture where I want it to be a little bit darker, just in other words, create a vignette at the bottom of the picture. And now I'm bringing on yet another texture, and I'm going to make it black and white. I'm going to copy and paste it onto the main image like the other textures, and I decided that the sky still had just too much redness for my preference, so I used a combination of curves and selective color adjustment layers to fix that. This is the final image, and I really love how this picture came together. I just wish it was easier to notice the white feather pen that I'm holding in my hand because it's my favorite little detail, so I'm kind of sad about that. For the pages, I just ripped out 8 or so pages from a book and taped them together and took pictures of them in my apartment and actually flew the book pages in the air in front of the camera to capture them twisting and flying through the air. Feel free to imitate this exact picture if it helps you learn Photoshop. And also give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any requests, please leave a comment below letting me know what you would like to see from me. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a very creative weekend.